It's conceivable, even plausible, that under extraordinary circumstances, such as emotional upheaval, you could have telepathy going on between people who are effectively very connected to one another.
The idea is simple. If all reality is mental, and if individual minds are just local dissociations of a universal consciousness, then it makes sense that those boundaries aren't always perfect. They're stable, but not absolute. This means that under certain conditions, strong emotion, trauma, deep connection, those boundaries might loosen. And when they do, information might slip across. This is how analytic idealism creates space for things like telepathy, not as magic, not as pseudoscience, but as a possible effect of a natural process that isn't airtight. In ordinary life, we think of ourselves as closed systems. My thoughts are in my head, and yours are in yours. But if both minds are just parts of a greater whole, then that separation is already an illusion. The only thing keeping experiences apart is the strength of the dissociation. And like everything else in nature, dissociation may vary in intensity. This opens the door, not just for telepathy, but for many kinds of anomalous experiences. People who claim to sense events before they happen, or feel things at a distance, or perceive something beyond the five senses, might not be imagining anything. They might just be touching a layer of reality we usually block out. But that doesn't mean every strange claim is real. Analytic idealism doesn't say these things must happen. It just says they're no longer impossible. It removes the hard boundary that materialism places on experience. Instead of saying that can't happen because the brain is closed, it says if the mind is fundamental and if dissociation is imperfect, then some degree of crosstalk is to be expected. Of course, these moments are rare, unpredictable, and hard to measure, but that doesn't make them meaningless. It just makes them difficult to explain from within the dashboard. Some people report these things in moments of crisis, others through meditation or altered states. And if their accounts seem confusing, it might be because we lack the language or the tools to make sense of them. They don't fit our instruments, but maybe the world is bigger than our instruments allow.
Now, in reality, we have every reason to think that time and space exist only in here. We create time and space as a sort of a filing system for information about the world. Time as not fundamental, as an emergent property of more fundamental structures in reality.
We treat time like a constant, a flowing line from past to present to future. But if everything is mental and the mind works differently than a clock or a ruler, then maybe time isn't what we think it is. According to this model, time is not out there. It's something we generate internally so that we can organize experience.
We have the
not built into the fabric of reality itself. Kastrup describes reality as a kind of structure, a web of meaning, not a sequence of events, but a network of relationships. And what we call time is just one way of navigating that structure. It's like looking through a narrow slit in a fence. We see one thing after another, and we assume that's how the world works. But the world behind the fence doesn't change just because we're only seeing a small piece. This view has deep consequences for how we understand birth and death. If time isn't fundamental, then beginnings and endings aren't either. They're perspectives, ways of marking change, not absolute truths. Our lives feel like journeys, with a clear starting point and an eventual end. But from outside the time-bound view, there may be no start and no stop, just the ongoing presence of consciousness, flowing through different expressions. That also means that birth isn't the beginning of consciousness, and death may not be the end. These are transitions in appearance, not in essence. Kastrup uses the phrase, the crystal of eternity, to describe reality as it is in itself, outside time and space. In this model, what we call events are shadows projected into time from that larger structure. They're real, but only from a particular angle. What changes is not the substance, but the way it appears to itself. So when we think about who we are and when we began, it may be more accurate to say, we didn't begin, we became visible.
You do make that choice. In that sense, you have free will, in the sense that you have agency. But your choice is determined by that which you are. And you can't be other than what you are. And therefore, there is no could have been. So yes, we all make choices. But that may not be libertarian in the sense that we like to think that we could have made other choices. Maybe no. Maybe we couldn't.
When people hear that everything is mind, they often ask, what about free will? If consciousness is one field, playing out through patterns and appearances, does that mean we're just following a script? The answer is more subtle. Yes, we make choices, but those choices come from who we are in that moment. From our structure, our memories, our patterns, our internal conditions. We don't act randomly, and we don't always act freely in the way we imagine. The common view of free will says, I could have done otherwise, but in reality, our choices reflect exactly who we are. They're not outside of us, they are us. Kastrup explains that while our decisions may be determined by what we are, they still carry meaning, because every choice reveals something. It shows how consciousness unfolds through a particular experience, how it navigates a situation, how it encounters itself. He goes further to say, even God, even the universal mind, doesn't know in advance what choices will be made. The universe is computationally irreducible. That means the only way to know what will happen is to let it play out. There are no shortcuts.
Nobody in the universe can possibly know what choices you're going to make. Not you, not God, nothing. Because the universe is computationally irreducible. The only way to know exactly what the choices are going to be is to let the universe play itself out.
This brings an important shift. Meaning comes from discovery. Each decision isn't just an outcome, it's a moment of self-realization, a reflection of what consciousness is, as it expresses itself through you. So even if we couldn't have chosen differently, the choice still matters, because through it, something is learned, something becomes clear. And that may be the most powerful idea of all. You're not here to control reality. You're here to reveal